Welcome to the Nonfiction Shelf series here on the Shelf Addiction Podcast, where I feature a nonfiction title that I've read during the current month. If you enjoyed this episode and want to keep informed of what nonfiction titles I'll be discussing each month, please subscribe to the Shelf Addiction newsletter to stay in the loop. I am your host, Tamara Ford, and if you'd like to chat with me about the book reviewed in this episode, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Shelf Addiction. Before we get started, I want to share with you ways to support Shelf Addiction. If you enjoy this show and the content that I produce, please consider becoming a Shelf Addiction Patreon subscriber. You'll gain access to exclusive Patreon-only content, including secret live streams, bonus episodes, and more, especially for you. There's also a Ko-fi account if you prefer to make a one-time donation. If you'd like to help out in a way that's not monetary, please do so by sharing the podcast with those that enjoy reading. Your support to keep this show running means so much to me. You can find the links for Patreon and Ko-fi by going to shelfaddiction.com and clicking the Support Us tab. And I gotta say, I know it is technically April 10th, but I did read this in March, so this was the March nonfiction title. It's just been everything and anything getting in the way from me recording this episode, but I am here now and I'm excited to share this with you. Alrighty, let's jump into it. This month's title is I'll Be Gone in the Dark, One Woman's Obsessive Search for the Golden State Killer by Michelle McNamara. It also has the introduction by Gillian Flynn and the afterword by Patton Oswalt. This is a nonfiction true crime story. I listened to this on audiobook and I'm glad that I did. This audiobook was narrated by Gabra Zachman. Of course, Gillian Flynn did her own introduction and Patton Oswalt did his own afterward. The length is 10 hours and 7 minutes. It was released by Harper Audio on February 27th, 2018. So this is a fairly new title. This is a very in-depth and witty and smart account of the true crime of the Golden State Killer. He's the elusive serial rapist that turned murderer when terrorizing California for over a decade. Michelle McNamara is a journalist who died tragically while investigating this case. So some of this book is from her, written by her, and then after she died, parts of this were finished by her editor and other people that worked with her in researching this true crime. For more than 10 years, a violent predator committed 50 sexual assaults in Northern California before moving south, where he continued to rape and then murder women. Then he disappeared and he eluded capture by the police and some of the best detectives in the area. I really enjoyed the way that this book was put together. It really did feel like a true crime podcast of sorts, which on another note, you should know that there is a podcast by the same name, I'll Be Gone in the Dark, that you can find now if you are curious to listen to that. But it did feel like a true crime podcast / documentary, and it did have some story elements. So when we were learning about this elusive killer rapist, some of it seemed more like it was in story, which was good for consumption, and then other parts was more like editorial, similar to a true crime documentary. It is really, I think, a really strong book, and especially for someone that enjoys to listen to true crime. I don't read a whole lot in the true crime genre. This is actually only my second book that I've actually consumed in the true crime genre. I mostly consume via podcast. So this was very exciting for me to pick up. And I chose this because I really wanted something different, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't doing only memoirs or only certain types of books during my nonfiction journey this year. So Michelle was a blogger, and that is where she started. She had a blog dedicated to the East Area Rapist, which is EAR. That's what he was known as. So it started with that, and then it evolved as the years went by. This book has a lot of very detailed, very specific research. And again, it was written in a way that elevates it and makes it consumable for average people that don't have a lot of knowledge of crimes and how the police work and investigation. It's told in a way that everyone can digest. I think one of the best things that I got from this was learning about the evolution of the DNA testing and how much the process has changed over the years, because ultimately that is how the killer was caught, is through DNA testing. He evaded the police and everyone for a very, very long time before he was caught. So thanks to DNA testing, finally, he was brought to justice. So as the author died unexpectedly while writing this book, the author's husband and associates that worked with her during the investigation and her editor, they wanted this work published. So they worked together to get it completed. So you will hear notes here and there that say based on Michelle's notes or based on another piece that she had written. Basically, you can tell the chapters that were written by Michelle, and you can tell the other spots where there are editor notes with additional information there. So that kind of helped you get a better idea of where Michelle's writing ended and where others began. But because many hands were on this book, I do feel at times it was a little disjointed. There was a little bit of jumping around here and there. So I think that would be my one complaint about the book. And I think that is just due to different people having their hands on the book in order to get it finished. Now, while the audiobook narrator did a really good job, I would say for me, the book was a little bit long. I think they could have done the edit in a little tighter way, because I have to say it took me quite a while to finish this because I could only consume it in bits. It took me about 10 days to consume this 10-hour audiobook. I think that because of the subject matter that's really heavy, that also was a reason why it took me so long to get through it. But I do honestly feel that Michelle's findings could have been summarized more concisely, and maybe this book would have been nicer coming in around 7 or 8 hours. It was just a little long for me. Now, I mentioned the DNA. I do want to talk a little bit about what happened with the DNA. So ultimately, this is how the Golden State Killer was caught. Someone that's related to the killer gave their DNA for, I think it was 23andMe, that ancestry service. One thing that wasn't clear to me is how it got from 23andMe to this third-party site that was available to the public, and then that was obtained by authorities, and the connection was a match. We can have a whole nother conversation on what I feel about 23andMe and other sites like that, but regardless, the killer was caught thanks to DNA, and we are all grateful that that guy was put away. So this was actually a very interesting topic. I mean, Michelle is a very impressive woman, and the amount of dedication and research that she had to investigating this guy and trying to find him was nothing less than miraculous. Again, due to so many people working on the book, I think it kind of fell short a little bit. Definitely there are trigger warnings, obviously, for, we are talking about a serial rapist, serial killer here. So there are graphic descriptions of rape, assault, and murder. So please be aware of that. Okay, so with all of that said, I rated I'll Be Gone in the Dark, One Woman's Obsessive Search for the Golden State Killer, 3 out of 5 bookmarks. Again, I really enjoyed the narrator. I enjoyed hearing, the stories of the victims and survivors. I liked hearing about how the man was caught with the DNA at the end. And it's an interesting topic, so it definitely caught my attention. Now, would that motivate me to listen to more true crime audiobooks or read true crime books? I'm gonna say at this point, no. I think I enjoy the presentation of a podcast and a TV documentary more than a book. Like I said, this book was good. It had a lot of information, and clearly Michelle's a talented writer as well as researcher and everything else. But it just fell a little short for me when it was said and done. But if you enjoy true crime writing, then this will be definitely up your alley. Or if you've been listening to the I'll Be Gone in the Dark podcast and you want to find out even more details that the book will give you, I definitely recommend that you read it. Okay, so we are going to end things there. Thank you so much for downloading today's episode, and I will catch you guys in the next book chat. Take care, guys. If you enjoyed today's book chat episode and would like to show your support, there are a few things you can do. Head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a positive 5-star review. You can follow me on Twitter at Shelf Addiction. Most importantly, you can share this podcast with friends and family that enjoy all things bookish, including author interviews. Thank you for listening, and until next time, happy reading.